Welcome back everybody to another MOTOBOB video where you join me again at Triumph headquarters in Hinckley. Now this is a massive leap forward for this line of bikes. The previous gen was starting to look a little long in the tooth and it was quite weighty, but this new bike's been put on a massive diet. There's more power, a new distinctive character to the engine, and across the bike lots of tweaks and changes in terms of comfort, safety and handling. In fact, Triumph are so confident about this new update that they say it's better than its closest shaft-driven competition in almost every department. I'll leave it to you to figure that one out. So in this video, I'm going to go through all of the changes, and if you watch it through, I'd love to hear from you in the comments at the end. Is this a genuine GS killer? First up, let me talk you through the lineup. We've got a new naming convention roughly inherited from the Tiger 900. So you've got the GTs, which are slightly more road focused, and then a couple of rally models which have an off-road bias spec. The standard GT is the entry point into the lineup. You've got a GT Pro with a few more features and standard accessories. And then at the top of the GTs, you've got the GT Explorer. That's got a 30-litre fuel tank, as well as some other extra features we'll talk about later. There's no entry-level rally, you just go straight to the Rally Pro. And then at the top of the whole Tiger 1200 tree is the Rally Explorer. That bike's a direct competitor for BMW's GS Adventure. It's off-road biased and has that huge range owing to that big fuel tank. But what's interesting is there isn't really a cast-wheeled, lower-slung version of the GS Adventure. So the GT Explorer kind of sits in a field of one, and it's a bit of a unique proposition. And look, depending on which version you choose, the weight savings are massive, up to 25 kilograms versus the previous generation. And on the bigger models like the Rally Explorer, it's up to 17 kilograms lighter than the equivalent GS. Huge weight savings, so here's how they've done it. So first up, the frame, and that's been completely redesigned with 5.4 kilograms saved, a huge amount there, and probably from the information we've had, the biggest single saving. So it's still steel at the front section here, but we've got forged aluminium plates on the side and then aluminium tubing on the subframe there. And it's also worth pointing out that you now get a bolt-on subframe. Moving on to the swing arm, and we've got more weight savings here. So the previous gen had a single-sided swing arm. It looked great, but this version now gets a dual-sided swing arm that saves you 1.5 kilograms, and on top of that, it's also stronger. Personally, I love a single-sided swing arm. I think they look great on the Rocket and the Speed Triple, but on this genre of bike where you're more likely to have luggage, you don't really get the full visual impact, and so personally, I'd take lightness and strength over looks. And we've also got weight savings in the tank as well. So the previous gen was made from steel. This version is made from aluminium. As I mentioned, we get a 30-litre tank on the Explorer models, but it's 20 litres on these bikes. So the base GT, the GT Pro, the Rally Pro, 20 litres, and I think the fuel consumption figures are yet to be confirmed because it's been homologated, but we're estimating around 400 kilometers of range here, so about 250 miles. On the Explorer versions, that 30-litre tank, I'm sure you can do the math, but I'll do it for you anyway. You get 50% more capacity, so 600 kilometers of range, or about 375 miles. That's really quite massive. So if you're into your long distance touring or riding in remote locations where fuel stops might be less frequent, then it should certainly be on your shortlist. Now, another feature that's changed is previously you did get an electronically adjustable windscreen on the Tiger 1200. It's kind of an interesting inclusion there because it was pretty much the only adventure bike that got it. Really, it's for big touring bikes like Harleys and Indians and Goldwings and BMW RTs. Triumph have made the decision to get rid of it in favor of a regular manually adjustable screen in order to save weight. And I've got to say, that mechanism is absolutely brilliant. Even better, I'd say, than the Tiger 900, which has a good adjustment mechanism, but you have to push it a little bit. This, you just go straight up or down and it holds its position. It's just as quick and convenient, I'd say, as an electronically adjustable screen. And then last up on the weight loss front, we've got this new silencer, which is lighter and slimmer. So first up, you know, this is held fairly high, so reducing mass here helps to keep the center of gravity low. And Triumph have done that by removing the linkage for the rear shock, which means there's more space for a big cat under here, which means that this can be a little bit less substantial. The other thing to point out is it's slimmer, so if you do run luggage, when you've got them fully loaded up, the closer that they can be to the center of the bike, the less you're going to feel the effects. So low speed maneuvers and that sort of thing, you want that as close to the bike as possible. So clearly that weight loss is going to benefit the acceleration and the handling, but it's not just that. There are plenty of changes to the engine, suspension, brakes and wheels that should also aid the performance. First up, the engine, and it's a bit like a combo of something like a Speed Triple and the Tiger 900. So it's got the same bore and stroke, and therefore the 1160cc capacity is the new Speed Triple engine. It's pretty closely related, but of course it gets its own power delivery and characteristics that better suit an adventure bike, so more mid-range focus than top-end sportiness. So yeah, not quite as powerful as a Speed Triple, but still 9 PS more than the previous generation, so it's now 150 at 9,000 RPM, and you've also got 130 Newton meters of peak torque, so that's 7 up on the previous generation. Triumph also point out that it's now 14 PS more than the GS. Now admittedly that bike makes more torque and makes it lower down, but if you hang on to the gears, especially with the weight loss, I'd say this is probably quicker in a straight line. Now the thing about the Tiger 900 I mentioned is that it inherits the design idea of the T-plane crank. Previous generations of this bike and pretty much every other triple have even spacing between the cylinders where they're attached to the crank there, so 120 degrees. It gives you a really smooth sounding bike, a smooth feeling bike, and almost a revvy sportiness. What Triumph seem to have wanted to do with the Tigers is give them a bit more guts and roughness, lowering the revs, that torquey sensation, and to do that they've made the first 2 cylinders that fire closer together, and then there are bigger intervals either side of the third. What that gives you is something that's a little bit more like a twin or a V-twin, lower in the rev range, so more of that sense of torque, a really nice growly exhaust note, but you still get the triple top end so you can rev it out a bit more. It really does work very well on the Tiger 900, a very versatile engine, and I just can't wait to find out what it feels like on a bike with 50 more horsepower, actually 56. We've also got a big update to the suspension. So you did get semi-active WP suspension on the previous gen, but this new system from Showa is much more advanced. So you've got a chunky 49mm upside down fork and a Showa monoshock at the rear as well. 200mm of travel on the GT models, 220mm for a bit more off-road capability on the rallies. Now what you get with the electronic adjustment and semi-activeness is that you get automatic preload adjustment. That means that whether you're riding solo or 2 up or with luggage, it's quickly adjusting the preload to ensure that the bike sits level and maintains its handling characteristics. The other side of it is the damping. So you've got 9 steps of adjustment here from 1 to 9, with 1 being more comfort focused and soft, but then it firms up at 9 to make it more sporty and agile feeling. These are tied into the riding modes, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but also it's constantly adjusting based upon the IMU, which measures all sorts of lean angles, feeds that in so that the bike in real time is making adjustments to get the best out of the suspension. We've also got an update to the braking. So the previous generation did get good brakes. They were 4-pot radially mounted Brembos, but these are their Stylema calipers, so really top-notch stuff. You also get bigger discs for this year, so 320mm as opposed to 305 on the previous gen, so that should help with braking power. And you also get a radial master cylinder at the lever there, courtesy of Magura, so you should get a nice crisp feel at the lever. At the other side of the bars, we've also got a matching master cylinder for the clutch, a hydraulic clutch, and then on the rear brake, it's still a 282mm disc, but instead of a Nissan caliper, you now get a 1-pot Brembo. Obviously, I'll reserve judgment until I've ridden it, but from previous experience of braking setups similar to this, like the Tiger 900, you know, that bike's very good on the brakes. Now, we've also got new wheel sizes on this bike. So previously, you had a 19 front for a little bit more off-road ability, and then a 17 on the rear, and that's the same across the GS lineup as well, so a 19 front, 17 rear. On the GT this time, you still get the 19 front, but it's an 18-incher at the rear, and then on the Rally, we get proper off-road spec, 21-inch front and 18 rear. So yeah, that should mean much better rolling over rougher surfaces, but also a better choice of off-road tyres. We've got more road-focused or adventure touring-focused tyres on the GT, so Metzler Tourans. On the rallies, you get Metzler Karoo Streets, and if you want to take it up an extra notch, you've got the Michelin Anarchy Wilds as handbook-approved options. So look, lots of changes that should make it better on the road and off, but realistically, a lot of people buy these bikes in either spec to do a lot of touring miles, and that's where you appreciate creature comforts, safety features, and personally, for me, I like quite a lot of tech as well. Let's talk a bit about the ergonomics first. So seat height wise, you still get an 850 or 870 seat on the more road focused model here, the GT. You just adjust that with a little bar on the seat. It's very quick to do. On the Rally, it goes between 875 and 895, so quite a tall bike there. Fortunately for us shorter riders, there are a couple of provisions that might help you get your feet on the ground. Firstly, they are very narrow in the waist here. They're narrower than the previous gen, and that really does help with standover. Even in this high position, and I'm 5'9", I could still touch the floor either side just about, so in the lower setting, it'll be very comfortable indeed. The other option is a low seat accessory, so that takes 20 mil off the seat height on either bike. Now this update gets 20 mil more padding than the previous gen, so it's a very comfy, cushy seat. The low seat option removes that, so you can forego a little bit of comfort in order to reach the ground more easily. In terms of the rest of the rider triangle, we've got a new foot peg position, and then the bars are varied depending on the intended purpose of each bike. All of them are 20 mil wider, so you've got more leverage over the front and a more commanding riding position. But take the Explorer models, for example, with that big 30-litre fuel tank, obviously intended for lots of long distance riding, and so both bikes get bars that sit 16 mil higher for a more upright and sustainable riding position. Another change on this model is that the big traditional slab of a radiator behind the front wheel there has gone in favour of a split design up inside the bodywork here. Not only does that let you position the engine lower and further forward to get that centre of gravity low, and also aids cooling efficiency, but I've put it in this comfort section because Triumph say that it directs more of the airflow away from the rider, and so that means in hotter climates you're not going to feel quite so bothered. And then, like I say, I absolutely love having loads of tech on my bikes, and this is a great example of it, well implemented. So we've got a new headlight, it's LED. There's a daytime running light across the front there, but also it's tied into the IMU, so it's lean sensitive. You've got cornering headlights, so as the bike banks over, additional lights come on and that illuminates the inside of the turn. You also get a new 7-inch TFT display, so nice and big, plenty of screen space for managing all those riding modes. So you've got rain, road and sport as standard across the range. As you move up, you get off-road and rider configurable, and then the two Rally models both get off-road pro, which is where the ABS and traction control are fully disabled, so you can properly get a good slide on. Each of the riding modes affects throttle response, cornering ABS and traction control intervention levels, and then also the damping on the semi-active suspension. Not only does it change the level of damping, but you've got two ranges of damping that are different for road and off-road. Elsewhere, we've got hill hold control, so obviously great if you're loaded up with luggage and a passenger. Heated grips across most of the lineup, heated seat on the Explorer models. There's a quick shifter up and down, which has been improved for this generation. Tire pressure monitoring system, a keyless ignition system that's tied into the steering lock and fuel filler cap. And look, you get varying levels of spec based on the different bikes. It's worth having a look at the website to figure out what features you like the look of and therefore which bike might be best for you. You also get electronic cruise control across a lot of the bikes, not adaptive cruise control, which you may or may not have expected. Triumph say they spoke to some of their customers and the feedback on that particular feature was quite mixed, and I've experienced that myself as well in the comments of my videos. And Triumph also say it would have added massively to the cost of the bike, but not really given any value to the customer because it wasn't a feature they were looking for. Interestingly though, on the Explorer models you do get a rear-facing radar, and that enables blind spot detection. So we've got a couple of lights up on the mirrors here. If someone's sat in your blind spot there, it's going to illuminate to give you a warning, and then if you put your indicator on, it's going to give you an even more prominent warning to discourage you from moving out. A great feature and something that in those same feedback sessions was widely wanted by the customers. Loads of great technical updates then, but visually I think it's a stunning evolution as well. This particular Rally Explorer in this matte khaki finish, which you might recognize from the Tiger 900, I believe it was a good seller there. I think this is the best looking of the lot. Very modern and quite muscular. It really does bring the Tiger 1200 right up to date, but I'd love to know what you think of it down in the comments below. Pricing varies from $14,600 for the entry-level GT right up to $19,100 for this fully kitted out top-spec Rally Explorer. Obviously that's going to be a price increase on the previous gen, but there are so many more features that I'm sure Triumph are pretty confident that it's worth it. They also pointed out that if you compare it to the equivalent spec of GS, Take the Rally Pro for example, if you added all the packages on the BMW configurator to bring the GS up to a comparable spec, it comes in almost $1,000 cheaper, and for the Rally Explorer against the GS Adventure, it's still over £300 less. And that's with the rear radar and the dedicated off-road wheel sizes and whatnot. Certainly looks competitive to me, but like I said at the top, I'd love to know what you think of it down in the comments, so let me know, have they done a good job and does this stand up to the GS? Let me know what you think, and if you're new here and you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time, hopefully reviewing one of these. All right, thanks. I think that's it.